Hello and welcome to Pluribus Unum's Fireside Chat. Not as good as FDR's, but hey, it's something. There is honestly not much else, to talk about for, housekeeping or whatever. The only thing is, I scheduled this episode to be released at this, time period. I actually originally scheduled a different thoughts on to do, but then something happened, 2 weeks ago, which I was like, I want to talk about this person next then. And I was like, oh, but by this point, is it outdated? Should I just, wait to do it again? But then more things kept happening, and we're going to join in the many voices talking about it. I mean, outside of, seeing people respond on Twitter, I have not watched any, video about the topic, just so I can go in with my perspective. Anyways, with that out of the way, let's get right into the news. First, news coming from Chile. The Chilean Congress approves bill reducing work week to 40 hours. Chilean legislatures have overwhelmingly passed a bill reducing the country's work week from 45 to 40 hours in a bid to improve the quality of life and rights of workers in the South American nation. The measure passed the lower house of Chile's Congress by a margin of 127 to 14 after being anonymously approved by the Senate several weeks ago. Chile's left-wing president, Gabriel Boric, who is expected to sign the bill into law, hailed it as a pro-family project that aims at the good living of all. This is a project that will contribute enormously to our quality of life, said the Labor Minister Jeannie Jada. Yes, changes can be made to advance workers' rights. The bill represents a legislative win for Boric, who won an election on a left-wing platform promising to improve workers' rights, combat inequality, and promote social justices. However, some of Boric's larger ambitions, such as rewriting the country's neoliberal constitution inherited from the era of right-wing dictator Augusto Pinochet and making large changes to the tax code, have faced setbacks. So yeah, that's basically where things are going for Boric. Boric set out to try and make some massive legislative reforms, like it says, changing the Chilean constitution. That was his OG plan. He basically went into office with that goal in mind. But unfortunately, Boric has not been able to do that. Now you can get into the thousands of reasons as to why. For example, Boric is more of a reformist rather than a revolutionary style leftist. And also, the opposition, the right-wing opposition of Chile, is very big. The opposition in the House is 68 to Boric's 67. And the opposition in the Senate is 27 to 19. And the opposition ranges from center-right to full-on fascist, so that's why they've sort of been holding him back. And you could even argue that some of the people within his governing coalition are not necessarily the best. For example, two members of his coalition are the Liberal Party of Chile and the Radical Front, two parties who aren't even technically social democratic. So, okay, well, technically, some of them you could argue, it's they're the type of social democrat that would be anti-socialist, which is weird considering that they're part of a coalition called Democratic Socialism. Now, this is a side tangent, but this is how, the weird thing about the Chilean, political system, they sort of have this thing where it's coalitions within coalitions within coalitions. Okay, so Gabriel Boric, currently there's this massive coalition called the Governing Coalition. It's nothing really too elaborate. It's basically just all the parties that are going to work within the government coalition. There is technically a name for it called Unity for Chile, but that is mostly to put candidacies for the Chilean constitutional election that will be held on May 7th. To try and redo the Constitutional Convention. This faction is divided into two major coalitions, Approve Dignity and Democratic Socialism. Democratic Socialism is a group that is basically united the center-left parties of Chile. Meanwhile, the Approve Dignity is all of the bigger left-wing parties, except Approve Dignity is actually a coalition between two more coalitions, the Broad Front and Chile Digno, or Worthy Chile. Chile Digno is they're literally the hardcore left-wing parties of Chile. Well, not really the hardcore ones. That's in a different coalition called the Patriotic Union. But like this is like where the Communist Party is, for example. Then the Broad Front is where the, I guess, socially oriented left-wing parties in Chile are in. You know, one of the ones in there is Boric's party, Social Convergence. But that's really, like I said, that's a side tangent. That really wasn't important to explain. That's only important to explain so you can understand how weird this sort of thing is, but it is interesting. I mean, it does mean that there's like 20 or so parties that are in the Chilean realm. Seeing this makes me even think about revisiting the freaking, like, 10-party United States that I did and basically say, what if we did more? Or, at the very least, I would just explain how the U.S. system would work in this world. Let me know what you think. Maybe I'll do a video about it next year or this year, depending on if you're okay with it being a podcast or not. Judging by the fact that the segue to that topic was me talking about the coalitions, you can take a wild guess what one thing of that U.S. would be. Anyways, let's move on to the next story. Quite the very interesting one, to say the very least. Okay, so the Dalai Lama recently got into trouble because, oh boy. So, for those who don't know who the Dalai Lama is, the Dalai Lama is a spiritual leader of the Gelug, or Yellow Hat School of Tibetan Buddhism. It is the newest and most dominant form of Tibetan Buddhism currently. The Dalai Lama is also a very central figure in the idea of Tibetan unity, like reunifying the area of Tibet and making it its own independent country, who's gained a lot of notoriety ever since Mao Zedong took over China. And of course, being the head of like one of the heads of like a major thought of Buddhism, he's sort of become this interesting figure for a lot of people, where he's both considered this very important figure to, I guess, the people in charge, like the establishment, but also a huge leader for some people who would claim to be anti-establishment. You know, as that Family Guy joke once said, Buddhism, the religion that is very popular in Asian countries and annoying white people. And the Dalai Lama is sort of seen as like a reincarnation figure. Like the whole point is like every person who takes up the role of the Dalai Lama is considered to be a reincarnation of the previous Dalai Lama. But we know that's not really a thing. The current Dalai Lama is a man by the name of Tenzin Gyatso. And if those names sound familiar, yes, they were the namesake of two characters in the Avatar franchise. He's been the Dalai Lama since February 22nd of 1940. So yes, he's been a very vital character and leader within the Tibetan independence movement, which again, for people who do not like China, or at least communist China, that is sort of a movement that has been very heavily paid attention to. One of the things that is, like, and I'll just say right here, there's a whole, like, thing about, like, people saying, like, the Dalai Lama is, like, a CIA op. Not necessarily. He was. I don't know if he is anymore. But basically it was like, yes, they gave him funding and, like, Tibetan independence movement's funding very early on, but then they stopped it really quickly, you know, as soon as Nixon started actually trying to be friends with communist China. And now that the United States has very heavy economic ties to China, we have this weird thing where we want to be super anti-China, but also super pro-China. But like I said, both people in power love him, and people who are super anti-in power love him as well. Because, again, the people in power, you know, the neocons and neolibs, they want to, like, fight China, either directly or indirectly, but people on the ground, like, you know, the annoying white kids who go to Buddhist temples and stuff, and will, like, put, like, the, like, bumper sticker hashtag Free Tibet. There's always been a joke that has been, like, common for, like, oh, liberals love Free Tibet, which, in a way, depending on your definition of the word liberal, and that's something we'll be talking about at one point, wink wink, it either makes complete sense or it makes no sense. But anyways, why are we talking about the Dalai Lama now? Well, he got into a lot of trouble because there was a video of him at a conference where an Indian boy, because he's in exile in India, he was at a conference there, and an Indian boy came up to the Dalai Lama and asked for a hug. The Dalai Lama decided to do one step better and decided to give the little boy a kiss on the mouth. Odd, but I guess technically not wrong, because, you know, you see this all the time. Parents will kiss their kids on the mouths. We had that thing about, like, Tom Brady, I think it was, where he, like, had his son, like, come over and give him a kiss on the mouth. You know, in a lot of European countries, male friends kiss you on the mouth all the time, whatever. But then, it got into a little weird territory when the Dalai Lama gave the boy a little bit of a request. And a lot of people, of course, were reasonably concerned and wondering what the heck was going on. And what happened was that the Dalai Lama eventually released an apology explaining like, oh, that I didn't mean any ill intent for this, it was just like, some fun. But especially nowadays, people are very much weary about seeing this very large public figure just openly kiss a boy on the mouth and ask him to suck his tongue. And most people were readily willing to just chalk this up as like, oh yeah, this is just stupid. But then one interesting person decided to rear his opinion on this topic. A person that I was originally going to make this episode on, Dylan Burns, a liberal podcaster who you may remember frequently going to Ukraine. He released a statement on Twitter basically explaining like, no, this is actually part of Tibetan tradition. This is Tibetan tradition to stick tongues in each other's mouths. And what's funny is, I don't know if it was on Dylan Burns' tweet specifically or if it was a tweet of someone else explaining this, but yes, that is true. Apparently that is a Tibetan tradition, but tongue suction is not a part of it. So people were very weary of Dylan Burns doing this, especially considering he had another controversy surrounding a person he was associated with being outed as a groomer, and then that led to some accusations being levied at Dylan's way, but that's not really here nor there. The reason why I bring it up is because the only reason Dylan Burns ran to the defense of Tenzin Gyatso for this was because Tenzin Gyatso represents his own geopolitical interests. Like, if this was a situation involving anybody else who didn't represent any of his political interests, then he wouldn't have mentioned him at all. And to answer his deflection about like, oh, this is actually a Tibetan tradition, I'm just going to be upfront. I don't care. I don't care if this is a Tibetan tradition. I don't care about, like, traditions if the traditions are bad. Like, one of the big things, like, if you're ever going to get into an argument or a debate with someone, here's what you need to do. Ask them if they are okay with defending Mezitsa Bipe as a tradition. Now, what is Mezitsa Bipe? It is loosely translated as oral suction. It is a tradition in some extremely orthodox Jewish sects where after a baby is circumcised, the rabbi then mezitsas the infant to get rid of the blood and then spit it out. And it's supposed to be like, I guess, their holiness or whatever. The reason why I bring this up is because this specific tradition has led to a small epidemic of some Jewish kids getting syphilis. Are you going to defend that as a tradition, Dylan? I'm going to bring up literally this exact same argument when I inevitably do an episode on Dylan Burns, and will more than likely be including like 10 other kinds of creepy traditions. The next story that will transition us from foreign news to domestic news is something that, I don't know if this was a coordinated effort, but if it isn't, then it's just perplexing. I would honestly surprise me if this was not coordinated to some degree, because here's what happened. First, some Democratic lawmakers released a letter calling on Merrick Garland to cease the proceedings against Julian Assange. The members of Congress in question are Rashida Tlaib, Cori Bush, Greg Casar, Jamal Bowman, AOC, Ayanna Pressley, and Ilhan Omar. But then, not too long afterwards, 48 Australian MPs signed an open letter urging the U.S. Attorney General to cease attempts to extradite Julian Assange as well. Then, 99 Brazilian parliamentarians signed a letter doing the same thing. Then, 97 Mexican lawmakers did the same thing. And lastly, in the UK, 30 parliamentarians decided to release a statement saying that they also wanted Julian Assange to be freed. So if you've been keeping track, that is a total of 281 members of legislatures all across the world joining together to call on Julian Assange to be released. I would honestly have to say I'm rather impressed. I guess since this one's talking about a whistleblower, I guess we'll use that to transition to the next story. This one is, this is a very recent one, and oh boy, this is just really weird. Okay, so a 21-year-old airman named Jack Texera is arrested for Ukrainian document leak. So Jack Teixeira is a 21-year-old member of the Massachusetts Air National Guard, and he was arrested Thursday in connections with a massive leak of secret U.S. documents, Attorney General Merrick Garland said in a news conference after Teixeira allegedly shared records on the war of Ukraine and other sensitive intel. Now, here's the thing. I was reading one article about this because I was trying to figure out, what the heck did he actually even leak? And from what I remember, here's what I learned. Apparently, I learned that this thing happened last week, and I just didn't even see it. And apparently, there's some people online trying to have a field day about, they said it was Russian, but this guy was revealed to have leaked it. Russiagating again. So, this is the only article that I can see that actually, shares in detail what was actually leaked. So, apparently, some information was leaked from Russia language Telegram channels and other things, containing information about the Ukraine war, including assessments of Ukrainian and Russian battlefield struggles and plans for US and NATO forces to help Ukraine gear up for a counteroffensive against Russia. While they weren't detailed, they had some information about weapon systems, casualty estimates, and the status of heavily contested eastern Ukrainian city of Bakhmut. Other information revealed was that the Wagner Group apparently is attempting to try and buy weapons from the NATO-aligned Turkey and expand into Haiti. Also reportedly a plan for Egypt to secretly sell rockets to Russia, and offered insight into U.S. spying on foes like Russia and friends like South Korea. Now, I don't know because I remember I read something, but I couldn't even, I looked at the article and then I left to find a better one, but then I was like, okay, I can't find any other article, so I'll go back, but I can't find the original article. But they said something about a weapon system that was in China. China was mentioned in one of them, but I don't know if that's a big thing. Apparently, this was mostly just about the Ukrainian stuff, considering that's the biggest foreign policy decision being made at the moment. But what we currently don't have is a motive, because I'm getting conflicting news stories as to what the motive is. So, some people are saying Teixeira, he only did this to sort of show off to his friends. That was the original thing that I saw. But also, further looking into this, sees that Teixeira was part of a Discord group, which was basically the right-wing, gamer-type Discord groups. Shared racist memes and whatever. But the story that they've said so far is that it wasn't an ideologically released leak. But that also conflicts with some of the things that they say, because it says here that they would share stuff regarding stuff like Ruby Ridge and Waco, but it's okay, so then obviously they were politically motivated to a degree. It's these guys are anti-government. And of course, we're also seeing this huge debacle over this guy is a traitor, or this guy is bad because of the documents that he leaked, or his political views, or whatever. However, the right wing is saying this guy's a hero because, of course, they agree with him politically, either on this particular conflict or in general with him sharing racist memes and stuff. And they say he's a hero and he should be freed instead of being put in jail and he's defending the nation. But then it's then you're not going to say anything like this about Chelsea Manning or Julian Assange or Edward Snowden. In fact, many of the people who even point blank pulled up tweets from some of these people saying this guy's a hero, to which they found old tweets about Chelsea Manning, Edward Snowden, and Julian Assange where they revealed, these guys hate whistleblowers. What do I think? I really cannot say what is or isn't going on right now. I've seen some people try to say that he is the next Snowden, or he is the next Manning, or he is the next Assange, or he is the next Daniel Ellsberg. That does not seem accurate at all. Especially if his motive was not ideological. Because if it wasn't ideological, then the comparison with those guys is nothing. Because the other four, they were motivated by their ideology. However, if it is ideological, then I'd have to just disagree with the person's ideology, because this person does not seem like a person that I would like. And from what I've gathered, the leaks are not really that important, really, because as they say, the leaks didn't reveal, the leaks are only good in the sense of, if you want to, if the leaks are ironically only beneficial if you are pro-Ukraine, because from what it's gathering, it seems like they reveal more information about what Russia is trying to do for shady stuff, and how American allies can't be trusted. Honestly, I have no clue if this guy will even get mentioned in the big epic video that I'm making that I've been teasing for a little bit. You'll see what it is, maybe next year. Anyways, next news story. Dianne Feinstein, she's been getting into a lot of controversy nowadays because she's still old, and many people are openly calling on her to resign early because she has not been in the Senate for a while, and she is needed in the Senate at the moment so that Biden can confirm judicial nominees. But since she's not in the Senate, she can't, she's a member of the Judiciary Committee, she can't come. Now, this story reveals something very interesting. Democrats are stupid. Wait, shocker. Wait, what? I've never said that before. But yeah, this story reveals very heavily that Democrats are not smart. Why did they put her on a committee to begin with? Also, why did Democrats choose to re-elect her anyways when she was, in her 80s when the last election happened? And, biggest one, Democrats are stupid because when people are, many people are calling on her to resign now, including Ro Khanna openly calling for her to resign, and many progressive activists are calling on her to resign. But Democrats are saying, don't resign. Pelosi and many, liberal types are telling her to not resign and are dredging up old arguments that were already not relevant, that they failed previously on, that, they're dredging up the whole, you're being ageist and sexist against Dianne Feinstein, the same thing that was said when we tried to run a candidate against her in 2018. And the same argument that they made for Ruth Bader Ginsburg, when many progressive and liberal advocacy groups were telling on her to resign, many people were saying, oh, you're being sexist and ageist against RBG. And then it's that backfired immensely. Now, Feinstein has tried to do the thing where she's like, oh, you can replace me for the time being, but it's the fact of the matter is, she should not even have been on a committee to begin with. She shouldn't be in the Senate right now. Democrats should have voted her out in 2018. And of course, we're also going to see the liberals do the thing again, where it's you're not calling on Chuck Grassley to resign. It's yes, I would definitely call on Chuck Grassley to resign. He's a Republican. I don't want him to be in the Senate, period. But the thing is, the reason why people aren't calling on Chuck Grassley to resign is because Chuck Grassley isn't the one missing 60 votes in this year alone, in a time period where you literally, crucially, need your Senate members to go into the Senate. But one more thing that, again, shows liberal hypocrisy, and, not even, yes, liberal hypocrisy, but also how Democrats and liberals are really stupid, and for some reason, they literally can't even remember things that happened, not that long ago. But one of the things they've been saying is, you're not calling on Fetterman to resign. I find it interesting that Fetterman, you're not calling on him to resign from his position, even though he hasn't been in the Congress for a while. To which many people said, literally after he had his stroke, every single prominent liberal Democrat was calling on him to resign from being the Democratic nominee for his seat and wanted to appoint Connor Lamb. They are still desperately trying to cope with Connor Lamb, despite the fact that Connor Lamb overwhelmingly lost the primary. But one of the biggest, absolutely dumb things that I have seen is where one liberal account, K-Hive account, I don't know what she is. She's stupid, I know that. But she tweeted something where she's like, Bernie Sanders missed 746 votes in his entire tenure. Dianne Feinstein missed 306 votes during her tenure. Who should really be the one resigning? People like that are the reason why I'm pro-choice. Because she's literally trying to compare the entire tenure of Bernie Sanders and saying that he missed this many votes in this long period of time. I don't even get it. It really makes no sense. Bernie Sanders missed this many votes since he first came into the Senate. Okay, so he came to the Senate in 2006. That's what, 10 plus years. It's she only missed this many votes in 30 years. It's okay, and there are many reasons why that doesn't work. For starters, many of the reasons why Bernie Sanders missed votes was because in 4 years total, or at least around little under 4 years, he was running for president. So it would be like 2015, like early 2016, and like 2019, like late 2019 to early 2020. So that's like around like, let's just say 1.5 years for both. So that would be basically 3 years of his Senate tenure. He was running for president. But also, interestingly enough, again, this was a criticism levied to Bernie. Both after his heart attack, they tried to get him to stop running for president, and when he, plus Elizabeth Warren, Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, when all of those people were running for president, many outlets called foul and said, these guys shouldn't be focusing on presidential terms. They should be focusing on what's going on in the Senate. But interesting thing is, when big votes came to the Senate, you want to know where Bernie was? He was in the Senate voting. He made sure when there was an important bill that was coming to the Senate, he would be in the Senate chambers to vote. Meanwhile, as we've clearly seen, Feinstein has made no intentions of doing so for what's going on right now. But anyways, let's move on to the last story, which is technically the biggest story, but really it's not that big. Okay, so Senator Tim Scott has launched a 2024 Presidential Exploratory Committee, aka he's running. Like, let's just be real. Like, when exploratory committees aren't something that is like technically not something you're supposed to make public. The point of an exploratory committee is the point of an exploratory committee is basically you're exploring your candidacy. I guess technically the only reason why you would make an exploratory committee open is based on the idea that you might accept donations. But exploratory committees were originally things that were supposed to be done in the privacy, well, not privacy, but like they were public, but not like public. Basically, candidates would go around to certain areas of prevalence, maybe like do polls, do some appearances, basically float the idea of them running for president and see what the reaction is. That's what you're exploring. Like, you're exploring the idea of you running for president. But as people have started paying a lot more attention to politics, essentially announcing an exploratory committee is basically announcing that you are running for president. There really has only been one time in at least modern U.S. history that a person has announced a presidential exploratory committee and then ultimately not ran for the office. And that person is Roy Moore, when he launched a long-shot exploratory committee back in 2012. But yeah, Tim Scott has announced that he is going to be essentially running for president. Now, what is interesting about him is, of course, well, I mean, looking up a picture of Tim Scott, you'll know one thing immediately makes him interesting and different from the field. And in his first campaign ad, he made it very obvious that that's something that he's going to be running for with his candidacy. He's going to be using, like, him being a black Republican as a major talking point. Like, the leftists and the liberals, they're going to try and ruin everything, and I'm going to try and fix everything. They're going to try and demonize race and stuff. But meanwhile, I'm going to be here, and I'm the... Like, that's what he's run on his entire political career. Like, I am the antithesis of what liberals and leftists say, that the Republican Party is, like, this rural redneck party. But it's like, I mean, it still is. It just so happens to have you here. But I also said, like ironically, the two figures that I mentioned, like that, they're him and Nikki Haley. I mentioned very early on when in my first video where I talked about the 2024 election, all the way back like after like 2020, like in the end of year segment. I basically like made this like very early on like 2024 election video, basically like mirroring a video I did way early on about the 2020 election back in 2018. But essentially, him and Nikki Haley are doing literally the things that I said they were going to do. Like, I said that they would probably run on sort of like the idea of like, oh, we are not the typical Republican. We are different because of our race or gender or both. But also, both of them were going to run as essentially agnostics on the Trump question. Like, they've said just enough pro-Trump things that they could win Trump base over, but they also said just enough anti-Trump stuff to win that base over. That way, whatever crowd is needed for the cycle, they can go in that crowd. I'm going to take a wild guess and say that Scott might be very soft on Trump during the campaign. In fact, if you want to be a little conspiratorial, maybe he might be intending to run as a spoiler for Nikki Haley, because like him and Nikki Haley are both from South Carolina, both prominent individuals in the Republican Party of South Carolina. She was the former governor, he's the current senator. So of course, these two people might, especially, and again, they're going after the same electoral base, people agnostic on the Trump issue. So they're going to be taking the same group of voters from each other, but we will ultimately have to see what happens next. Because for all we know, maybe Tim Scott doesn't even run. Maybe he does literally just not run at all. But this begs the question, like, are we essentially getting our people? Like, because let's look at the race thus far. We have Trump, who's of course running as like the Trumpian candidate. We have Haley. She's essentially, again, the agnostic on the Trump question, but I think she's going to be leaning more in the anti-Trump direction, considering she's running against him. But I think she's not really gonna run as like the super pro, like super anti-Trump. She'll just be like, I'm running on do my own thing. It just so happens that it's gonna be against Trump. Then there's Vivek Ramaswamy. I have literally no clue who this guy is, or why he's really considered like a major candidate. I'm gonna take a wild guess and say that they're trying to make him their Andrew Yang. Like he's gonna be right-wing Andrew Yang. Newsflash, that already exists. His name is Andrew Yang. And like I said, he's going to try to be like Andrew Yang. We have Asa Hutchinson, who is running as the anti-Trump candidate. Really, all we have left is essentially just having DeSantis announce. Like, once DeSantis is in, like, essentially, the race is kind of, like, over. There's really no room for anybody else to run. Though I guess more people could still run, because I said that after Bernie and Biden announced that there would be no reason for anybody else to enter, and yet, lo and behold, we had a couple of other people who decided they were going to enter. Didn't turn out so well for them. But anyways, now let's finally move on to the main topic of this video. This one is sort of like going to do a thing that I've kind of wanted to, like, I guess, rethink and redo. But, like, one of the problems with Thoughts On that I've noticed is that I cover a lot of men. I don't really cover a lot of women on this show. Well, for this year, I guess half a year, I am going to try and change that. I'm going to try and cover some more women. And this is my first one to talk about. Because, like I said, a lot of things happened with this woman in particular. Now, I also should mention that you might be wondering, why am I covering this woman in particular? Because I've technically already covered an associate of hers that is way more, like, prominent and essentially became, like, a thing about his network, which she is a part of. But like I said, you'll see many reasons why I'm talking about her in a bit. But let's just go over who she is. Anna Hitmisa Kasparian, also known as Anna Kasparian, is an American progressive political commentator, media host, and journalist. She is the main host and a producer of the online news show The Young Turks, having begun to work as a fill-in reporter for the show in 2007. She also appeared on the television version of the show that aired on Current TV. She formerly hosted The Point on the TYT network, and currently hosts a Jacobin YouTube show, Weekends with Anna Kasparian and Nando Villa. Now, one thing that is very interesting about Anna Kasparian that I learned while researching for this episode is that she resolved one of the huge controversies surrounding the Young Turks. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, one of the major controversies surrounding the Young Turks revolves around their name, the Young Turks being a group that committed the Armenian genocide. Anna Kasparian solves this by herself being Armenian. So I guess the accusation that Cenk is supporting the Armenian genocide kind of goes away when his main co-host is literally Armenian. I guess we can use that thing as a explanation. Now, where did Anna Kasparian come from? She said that she got in her inspiration for journalism seeing Barbara Walters on 2020. After graduating with a Bachelor of Arts Journalism from California State University, Northridge, she became an assistant producer with CBS Radio, but didn't end up liking it because this is a similar story to her inevitable co-host, that mainstream media, they do things a little differently. She wanted to be more independent and more free, so she ended up quitting her job in order to get a master's degree. But then, in April 2007, Anna Kasparian became a producer for a little-known internet show known as The Young Turks. She was skeptical, given her Armenian heritage and the name, but then Cenk Uygur gave his weird explanation as to why the Young Turks is actually not a bad thing, and then she herself admitted that she kind of weaseled her way into becoming a on-air host, because they needed a female host, and their female host at the time quit, so she was like, I'll fill in for her, and they're like, yeah, sure, why not? And lo and behold, she ended up filling in, and now she has become a staple of the Young Turk show. And if you know the story of the Young Turks, they became very prevalent on the internet in political online history. They're literally one of the largest online news shows, and in a way sort of pushed the rock that led to the creation of many current online media, news, political outlets today. I know this isn't about Anna, but I made a tweet not long ago where I said BreadTube essentially owes its life to these 4 people, and the 4 people I included were Richard Dawkins, Bernie Sanders, Destiny, and the Young Turks. Each of them for various reasons. Richard Dawkins is, of course, one of the leading figures of the New Atheist movement, and that, of course, led to one of the largest and most prevalent YouTube communities in politics, the skeptic community, which many people in the current age of internet politics, even the ones that you don't like, take inspiration from. Some of the current ones literally being members of the skeptic community themselves. Bernie himself is a very obvious one, considering he is sort of the figurehead of the new progressive movement. He's the reason why these people can run and say they're socialists and not be immediately ran off the internet, because if you did that before, you would just be like, haha, you're a socialist, you're a communist, whatever. But now people actually take them seriously, thanks to Bernie making the term socialism not a dirty word. Destiny comes from the idea that many of at least the streaming sphere of the YouTube, BreadTube type thing comes from him, and he's sort of seen as one of the leading figureheads of BreadTube. And I know a lot of people will say well, that's not necessarily true. He was never really a figurehead of leftist politics, but he was a leading figure in BreadTube. BreadTube, you don't even remember, BreadTube literally was literally, it was a decentralized movement of center-left to left-wing podcasters and YouTubers. And it just so happened he was one of the people, because of one of the very interesting things that happened in the immediate aftermath of 2016 when he debated JonTron. So for better and for worse, he's the reason why debate bros are a thing. So essentially, he's the inspiration for the streaming and the streaming and debate sphere. Cenk Uygur and the Young Turks, and I guess to an extension Anna Kasparian, they're there because, and it's weird to say this nowadays, because especially considering some people don't even necessarily use this terminology in the right way, but they essentially started the whole idea of the dirtbag left. Now, the dirtbag left is a term that is very loosely given to a lot of people, so let me explain what I use the term dirtbag left to mean. The dirtbag left is a term that I use and other people use to describe people on the left that are tired of civility politics. They're not going to sit there and be prim proper, debating conservatives and having them on equal footing or whatever. No, they're just going to flat out be you're dumb, you're idiotic, you're a Neanderthal, you're stupid, and they're going to be very, very loud in a lot of their viewpoints. They're not going to shy away from saying, the F word or the H word or the D word. They literally would not shy away from their opinions, even if it hurt your feelings. Now, I didn't really see this at first, but I guess there is proof of it sort of in this biography thing. But I remember at one point I was watching The Amazing Atheist long ago, and he explained in a video where he was talking about the Young Turks, he explained how the Young Turks have this same formula that they used for their sphere, for their show, or whatever. The idea was that they would talk about a news story, Cenk and Anna would be in a newsroom, they would talk about a news story. It would usually be Anna, but sometimes it'd be John Idarola or one of the other people. But they would have a news story. Anna would then respond by saying something something that is kind of far left. Not far left in like a socialist way or like whatever, but it would be far left in the sense of like liberal, but not like mainstream liberal, but it would basically what conservatives use the term liberal to mean. Like she would be like far left in the term of like the liberal social order. Then after she would say her thing, Cenk would then go, actually, let's do this. And he would propose something that is more moderate. And then she would go, I didn't think about it, Cenk. You were right. I just remembered as I was recording this, it's not Cenk, it's Cenk. But hey, better pronunciation than what the conservatives like to pretend to do. But yeah, there was technically verifiable proof that she was more radical than Cenk Uygur. Because in the 2020 election, she wrote in Bernie Sanders, reasoning that it didn't matter because she was in California, even though in 2016, she was an avid Hillary Clinton supporter. After the primary, she was one of the originators of the vote blue no matter who type movement that progressives did after Bernie lost. But she wasn't afraid to pick fights, and she wasn't afraid to speak her mind, like, ironically, sometimes even more than Cenk would, because she was one of the earliest members of the TYT crew, and the TYT, like, circular group that would call out Dave Rubin. For those who don't remember, because this is literally a lifetime ago, essentially, Dave Rubin used to work for the Young Turks, and was essentially no different from Cenk, Anna, Secular Talk, or any of the other people in that circle, calling out the fact that the reason why he left and he did his right-wing turn was literally just so he could make money. Not doing any of the BS of like, oh, well, he may have had like some ideological differences about the blah, 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 but it's like, no. She just said like, yeah, he literally just left to make money. She was also one of the first people in this sort of circle and sphere that openly called out Jimmy Dore. Because, like, this is one of those weird things. I don't know if it's like they have a contract or something or whatever, but literally, all of these people, they're literally like the second this person like does this huge right-wing shift, all of a sudden, they just are silent on them. And then like a couple of years later, then that's when they start getting critical. Although I guess technically you could make an argument that technically, because Sam Cedar is sort of in the circle because he was at one point somewhat affiliated with TYT. So maybe he technically called out Jimmy Dore first. But when I say TYT, what I mean is literally Cenk, Anna, John Iadarola, Ben Mankiewicz, and Humanist Report and Secular Talk. The reason being is that those two were a part of the TYT network at some point. So in that circle, she was also the first to call out Jimmy Dore, but her calling out Jimmy Dore wasn't necessarily due to his politics. It was due to something extremely personal. For those who do not remember this controversy, Jimmy Dore was calling out TYT for being like, shit lib. Then Anna Kasparian went into his DMs and said like, Jimmy, knock it out, or I'm going to reveal this thing that I've kept hidden for this long time. And then she revealed this big bombshell that Jimmy Dore had essentially been sexually harassing her when he was working for TYT, making very lewd comments about her attire, such as him saying that he was like, hey Anna, well, where do you buy your clothes so I can give them to my wife? Then also, she was giving a lecture to students because she became a lecturer for the university that she graduated from. And then at one point, she like dropped a pencil or something, and then she like bent down, and then I guess her skirt was like riding up, I guess. Then Jimmy Dore said, hey Anna, nice skirt. And in Jimmy's mind, everybody was laughing, and according to Anna's story, nobody was laughing. And what's weird is that this controversy somehow made people still not like jump on the anti-Jimmy Dore train. People claiming like Anna's trying to smear Jimmy Dore, which is weird considering Jimmy Dore, literally to try and get ahead of the story, explained everything that he did, and it literally did not contradict what Anna Kasparian was saying at all. He literally just admitted to what he did. And then we had people who Jimmy Dore has literally tricked into just being these completely deranged idiots, somehow completely go off the rails and still attack Anna. There was one person I got into an argument with about this story who literally says that she herself was a rape victim, but she was anti-Anna Kasparian and somehow made the spin that Anna Kasparian was sexually harassing Jimmy Dore because of the type of clothing that she would wear. Now, of course, this person could have been flat out lying to me about who they were and if they were harassed, but Jimmy Dore's audience is full of, like, people who are completely brain dead, so I would genuinely believe that a Jimmy Dore fan who had that experience would come to the conclusion that they did. My faith in humanity has been greatly ruined thanks to becoming a YouTuber. Now, I've kind of like stayed between the lines of like being somewhat positive to basically neutral. This is where we're going to start getting into some problems and sort of like negative things. Like, let's reiterate one more thing, positive thing, again, before we begin. Anna Kasparian, as along with Cenk Uygur, with TYT, they are what has created this group of people in the political sphere to begin with. BreadTube, including me, would not exist if it were not for TYT. I genuinely would not be in this position right now if it were not for TYT, which I guess you can say is a bad thing, considering my position is not the best one, but, you know, I wouldn't be in this seat right now doing this thing for you all if it were not for TYT. But now we're going to get into some, again, problems that I have. For starters, the ideology of TYT. Like, let's be real. Like, everybody says this about TYT. Like, one thing everybody says about TYT is, like, they're progressives, or they're, like, left populists. They're not. They're liberals. These guys have always been, like, I think literally one of their previous taglines was home of the liberal. No, it was home of the progressives or something. But these guys are essentially, like, I guess that term you could say is liberal progressive. They're not socialist. They're pro-capitalist. They want to make capitalism with a smiley face. They don't understand that capitalism in and of itself is a frowny face. And that, of course, leads to them to have liberal-minded outlooks of a lot of policies, especially ones that we genuinely do believe need more than just liberal-minded reforms. And when I say liberal, like, again, teaser, I guess I'll just say it. Next week's video is going to be a video about liberalism, where I'm going to go into, like, the analysis of, like, liberalism in and of itself as, like, the whole ideology and all of its, like, sub-ideologies. But when I say liberal, what I mean is I will basically use a Phil Oakes song to explain what I mean. 10 paces to the left on a good day, 10 paces to the right when it affects them personally. And that's essentially been sort of Cenk and Anna's outlook on politics at the very, like, I guess basically since the whole time, but really, it's only started becoming noticeable in 2016. Like, here's an incredibly minor one, but it happened during the 2016 election when they were at the 2016 Republican convention covering it, and then Alex Jones showed up and came onto their stage, and then Anna Kasparian was yelling at him, like, "Get off the stage, you fat fuck." But not that long before that episode came out, Anna Kasparian made this huge rant on TYT decrying fat shaming. Like, you shouldn't fat shame people, and fat shaming is bad, and blah, blah, blah. Now, when it affects her personally, she'll do the thing. But again, that one is, like, relatively minor. I'm trying to talk about more, like, broad political analysis. And that hasn't really become a lot of more noticeable until very, very recently. I guess I'll start with a segment that I guess kind of is based, but also kind of not based because of something you'll get into in a second.
If we're going to sit around and wait for our elected lawmakers to protect us from these religious zealots and these right-wing authoritarians, man, we have another thing coming. How many times do we need to be disappointed by them? I'm done with them. And personally, I don't speak for everyone in this network. I want to be clear. I'm speaking for myself. I'm done with them. Completely. The Democratic Party, every single one of them, that includes the squad, I don't care anymore. They have not delivered. They have not delivered. I'm done. Okay. It's time to organize, create organizations that get women and get people in this country what they need. People who are willing to pick up the slack for these disgusting, feckless, corrupt politicians. That's what we need to focus on.
Now, if you know me, you know that there are some elements of that are definitely in agreement with what I believe, but then some of that is like, okay, you lose me. The one thing that she loses me on is the squad. Because again, like, I do not believe that the squad has failed or the squad has not delivered. I don't believe that at all. And I guess to a degree, I'm starting to kind of like veer away from some of the things Anna said, because it's like, Anna Kasparian, like, she's saying now, like, it's time to organize, it's time to do this, it's time to do that. It's like, no, the time to do that was 2016, and you guys chose go into the Democratic Party. You guys chose Justice Democrats. You guys chose this strategy. This is what you chose. You made this decision. You understood the risks. You understood how things would go. And you made the decision that Justice Dems and brand new Congress and this kind of stuff was the best solution forward. You had all that time. You could have been doing that time to make the new independent party. You could have been using this time to do this and do that. You guys didn't. You wasted your opportunity, and now we're too late. Like, we are too late. Like, all these people that keep trying to say, like, we need to form a new party. We need to form a new party. It's like, guys, why do you keep doing this? Why is it every 5 years you want to form a brand new political party or form a brand new political group? Why? You are not doing anything. At this point, you literally, your only option is to work within the viable, and your only option is literally through the areas that we have currently. DSA, Justice Dems, Greens, like, these are your only routes. Anna, you literally can't complain. You're sitting next to a guy who co-founded an organization to do this. You guys literally, and it's the same problem with Cenk Uygur too. Like, all of a sudden he randomly goes like, oh yeah, the squad fit. Like, I really hate this notion of like Cenk and Kyle and like Anna Kasparian. They're all like, all the squad failed. It's like, no, the squad did not fail. The squad did not fail. I will fight you on this, and I will say this at the top of the hills. The squad did not fail. DSA did not fail. Justice Democrats did not fail. They didn't fail. They have had many successes. It's not my fault that you guys had such high expectations that you're disappointed that they don't meet them. Like, people are literally mad at the squad and AOC and all these people. They're mad at them for voting for Nancy Pelosi. And it's like, what did you expect? You're voting for Democrats. These are Democrats. Of course they were going to vote for Pelosi. Of course they're going to vote for their freaking, like, of course they would vote for the Democratic candidate for Speaker of the House. Of course they would do that. And then they do the things that you guys say today, like, oh, we need you to protest in the streets. We need you to do X. We need you to do Y. And then things come out and say, oh, this member of Congress is actually the least effective member of Congress. And then you're going to bitch and moan and say, like, these guys are not effective. And then they start doing legislative work, and now all of a sudden you're going to get mad at them again. Like, literally, when that report came out, like, AOC is literally one of the least effective members of Congress. And then people were going around saying, like, see, this is why working with the Democratic Party failed, and we need them to be more bombastic and more, like, not working with other people. It's like, that makes literally no sense. It was that strategy that made them not effective. Now, okay, here's the thing. I'm sure, like, you might say, but this is, like, particularly about the abortion issue. But it's like, this is not just the abortion issue. It's this entire thing in general. It is this squad in general, because they're even going, this is weird. This is so weird. Anna Kasparian especially is being incredibly weird about this. Like, Cenk and Anna and Kyle and all these people, they both make these weird claims that the squad is too far left and also too corporate. Like, they're both mad that these guys won't endorse Nia Turner in a bid of Congress that was obviously going to fail. The second one, I should remind you, not the first one. The first one, they did endorse her. But the second one, the immediate, like, again, it was Nina's fault for running an immediate rematch. She was doomed to fail day one of that bid. Of course they're not going to back her in this bid, or at least not a majority of them, because they understand that if you spread your sources too thin, then things are bad. Like, for example, like, AOC, she endorsed, like, the year she won, she endorsed a ton of people in primaries. She publicly went to rallies after she ran and went to endorse a lot of other people across the country. James Thompson, Brent Welder, Carrie Evelyn Harris, Cynthia Nixon, Cori Bush, like, all of these people, they went to do this thing. And in the next election, they endorsed less candidates so they could focus their energies on making sure that the smaller amount of people that they elected win. And I think a lot of this really does stem from the fact that these people, they used to be able to claim, like, oh, we're the reason why X people won. But they've had more successes after they were gone. Like Cenk in particular, like, he originally could say, like, I'm the reason why the squad is there. But it's like, the squad has elected significantly more people ever since he left. But this is where I'm going to get into another thing. Like, they're both going to, like, that's, like, they claim that there's too corporate because they voted for Pelosi, or they don't do X, Y, and Z that they can't do since there is so little of them. But then also, they are going to get mad that they are running to the left. For Kyle, he thinks that AOC wasted her political capital on woke social issues for no reason. Like, he literally said that in an episode. I'm literally like, what are you talking about? I have literally no clue what you were talking about. And it's like, oh, she said Latinx. Really? That's the issue, that you're like, she used her, like, she went to wokeism. Like, it is ridiculous. Cenk and Anna, their biggest ones, at least at first, seem to be policing, because they, even though they themselves were part of, like, the super, like, anti-police sentiment in the lead up to the 2020 elections, after that issue, quote-unquote, lost, even though a lot of the people who were advocating for defunding the police ended up getting elected, and it clearly didn't hurt Democrats' chances because they ended up having a 50-50 Senate, and they had a slim margin in the House, and they won the presidency. They're now going around saying that, no, you can't run on defunding the police because, and then they go into the huge amounts of crime. They're really mad about, like, the crime in LA and how that's actually really, really bad, and that defunding the police is bad because it doesn't poll well and blah, 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 all this bull crap. Even though, again, they were very much advocating for defunding the police and reallocating police funds during the 2020 cycle, when people like Bernie were saying it, and when AOC and Cory Bush were running on it initially, they were all supportive of it. But then, when they were met with their own personal problems, all of a sudden, no. Again, 10 paces to the left on a good day, 10 paces right when they affect them personally. Even if the issue doesn't actually affect them, they still act like it affects them. Sure, it doesn't matter if you notice that crime has gone down significantly since the 80s. These guys are literally boomers, essentially. These guys see on the news, and in fact are the news, that show, oh, all these bad things are happening. So that means these bad things must be happening more now. When in fact, no, they've been happening at basically the same rate, and as crime statistics shows, a higher rate previously. But since we didn't have the 24-hour news cycle, we wouldn't know about them. Plus, with the rise of the internet, we can literally find out, like, literally, in a span of, like, a minute, you'll be able to find out about a mass shooting that's happening on the other side of the country. But, of course, for Anna Kasparian, she's gotten into a lot of heat about a very specific thing that very much aligns with the liberal-style politics. This all started on March 21st during the TYT bonus episode, where when they were talking about some other issue, I don't really know what it was, I don't watch TYT and I haven't since 2016, as they were wrapping up the show, this exchange happened.
No, look, this is another thing that Bethany is 1,000% full of crap on. So, do progressives actually attack people for having kids? I've literally never seen it. And by the way, now there's a lot of leftists who say crazy stuff, right? And I still haven't seen them say that.
Yeah.
You're making it up entirely. Look, I can show you tons of leftist stuff where I go, oh, that's going too far,
like
right?
referring to women as people with uteruses?
Yeah, I mean, there's all the stupid language and 1,000 other things.
And a lot of people were, like, a bit like, wait, what? Like, they didn't know what the heck was going on with that statement. Like, they were like, wait, what do you mean? They were like, Anna Kasparian's just making up this weird thing to, like, hate on trans people, I guess? So then Anna Kasparian released a tweet the next day saying, I'm a woman. Please don't ever refer to me as a person with a uterus, birthing person, or person who menstruates. How do people not realize how degrading that is? You can support the transgender community without doing this shit. To which, again, everybody was like, what are you talking about? Like, a lot of people were just so perplexed at this and, like, didn't know what they were talking about. But then there were some people who did know what Anna Kasparian was talking about, to which they tried to explain to her, no, you're not understanding. You see, This is terminology used for, like, say, clinical analysis, or to expand, like, because not every woman has a uterus, and not everybody with a uterus is a woman. So it's, of course, an inclusive term for trans people. And that was what they were trying to explain to her originally, and this is where she doubled down and why she brought up the transgender community. To which Anna Kasparian keeps insisting, oh, people are referring to her specifically as a birthing person, or to women in general as birthing people, to which everybody keeps responding, no, the term birthing person literally means that it is not exclusively targeting women. It is literally including more people than women. And it is, again, mostly a clinical term, and a term not really made for, like, person-to-person analysis. Here's the interaction I'm talking about in full. Matt, or Matt XIV, says, "Hi Anna, no one is asking you to call yourself or be called anything other than a woman. Anatomy-oriented language is used in a clinical context where anatomy is relevant. This argument is like a mousetrap set up by TERFs. Please don't take the bait." To which this random buffoon named Michael Schellberger, who runs a Substacks, which proves that he is not a legitimate person, he, like, links a thing, and with the quote, "nobody," citing Biden administration replaces mothers with birthing people in maternal health guidance. And something that I guess, I don't really know what it is. I think this is the same thing, where it says reduces maternal mortality rate and ends race-based disparities in maternal mortality. The U.S. has the highest maternal mortality rate among developed nations, with an unexpected high mortality rate for Black, American, Indian, Alaskan, Native, and other women of color. To help end this high rate of maternal mortality and race-based disparities in outcomes among birthing people, and in addition to investment in maternal health, including American Families Plan, and then that's where it would end. To which Matt replied, "Thank you for finding an example of anatomy-oriented language used in a clinical context, just as I stated above." To which Michael then replies with Cori Bush saying her thing where she's talking about birthing people, and Nayral talking about birthing people. And then, let's look at this. Dr. Michelle Morse, a verified doctor, talking about birthing people. The Harvard Medical School talking about birthing people. Birthing People's Bill of Rights Code Edition. EDU. I assume it's like an education thing. Okay, let me see. Organizations are participating, the ACLU of California, Birthing Project USA. Oh, here's one. Inspired by Black Birthing Bill of Rights by the National Association to Advance Black Birth. Again, they keep citing, let me see, more. Birth equity for all Black birthing people. National Birth Equity Collaborative. Again, literally proving the point that Matt was making. All of these were being used in a clinical thing, with the exception of maybe Cori Bush's, but that's because she's literally trying to explain that, again, more people than women give birth. And there was this huge divide amongst left Twitter when all this stuff came down. One half was trying to say, I guess it's technically one half was on the pro-Anna side, which was divided into two sections. One was saying, oh, Anna Kasparian, she's just trying to express this opinion on this issue or whatever, but she's just misguided and hopefully we'll be able to educate her on the issue or whatever. But then there's some people who are literally just pro Anna, and then the other side of left Twitter was openly actively against her, because it's look, it people were trying to do a thing where it's oh well, she has a history of supporting trans issues, so it's we need to understand that she's on our side. It's we don't care. What are you talking about? We literally do not care. It does not matter if you have a history of being pro-trans. If you start saying something that's anti-trans, then of course you're going to get criticized for being anti-trans. And yes, she's literally, this is literally the definition of TERF. Trans exclusionary radical feminism. She's believing in, this is literally the TERF bait. They said, this is TERF bait. They're saying, there's a, she is taking the bait that this is a wedge between, this is them taking away women's rights or something. They're making women less than people. And there were some people, again, they were trying to do the thing where it's oh, well, we need to understand, Anna is on the good side of the issue. The next day, the 23rd, they tried to, again, make Anna Kasparian like, understand the issue.
Jasmine Bryant says, neither trans people or any organization that fights for us wants to refer to you as a birthing person. The language is used in a general sense to include trans men when a general statement is needed. When I'm reading about my rights being stripped away from me by the federal government, and when I'm reading quotes from the Democratic Party that failed to protect my reproductive rights, it adds insult to injury to read not women, but birthing people. I don't want to ever be referred to as a birthing person under any circumstance. I find it offensive. I respect the transgender community. I just ask that they also respect how other people want to be referred to. Person with a uterus, person who menstruates, birthing people. I just find it incredibly demeaning. And I'm allowed to feel that way. I don't think that that's transphobic at all. I will fight to the death for equal rights for the transgender community, period. And we've been doing that on this show. But respect goes both ways. It's that simple.
And I remember when that came out, a lot of people that were in my For You tab, especially, were trying to say, like, you see, this clears Anna's name. This explains everything. This makes it all make sense. No, it doesn't. It literally does not make it any better. Because the wording especially makes it very apparent that she's just not listening to the issue at all. Like, she's saying, like, she does not want to be referred to as a birthing person, when this whole time everybody keeps saying nobody is referring to you as a birthing person. And then every time everybody asks Anna, who has referred to you as a birthing person, she again, like, cites the same things. Like, oh, the NARAL says birthing person. Cori Bush went in the House floor and said birthing person. The Biden administration changed mother to birthing person. So again, like, they're still not referring to you as a birthing person. Like, Anna, if you're watching this, which I know she is, she's clearly the biggest fan of this show. Like, listen to this. This will hopefully help you. Have you ever heard of the elementary school adage about squares and rectangles? A square can be a rectangle, but a rectangle can't be a square. Women can be in the broad category of birthing people or people with uteruses, but that term, birthing people, is not a synonym for woman. This is literally the same kind of outlet like TERFs or second-wave feminists really do have against third-wave feminists and trans people and LGBTQ people and people of color. And I guess this is also just broadly sort of an activism thing. Like, this is sadly just a truth. Whenever one group of people gets their rights, all of a sudden, they don't feel the need to fight for other people's rights anymore. The activism of yesteryear was good, but the activism of this year is bad. In fact, this actually does bring up, because Anna Kasparian called out, like, a trans protest against somebody, and she's like, this is bad. You can't do it this way. You have to do it this way. Again, that is how I define the term liberal. Like, the activism of yesteryear was good, but activism of this generation is bad. And for feminism, white liberal feminists cannot see anything beyond them. That's where the term TERF literally comes from. It's the white liberal second-generation feminists that felt that their issues were the real issues. And now all these other things, they're like nonsense. They don't mean anything. Sure, Anna on paper will say stuff like, I'm pro-trans people. But when it comes to actually, like, advocating for issues for them, things are a bit different. And she can't see beyond her own selfish interests in regards to this issue. That's one of the main arguments everybody's been trying to make against Anna. Like, this isn't about you. You keep saying everybody's, like, trying to make you identify as a birthing person, but nobody is doing this. The only people who are making this an issue are people on the right who are claiming this is an issue, and people on the left are supposed to realize this isn't an issue, but people who were originally the ire of the right wing are now going to join the right and say, like, to fight for whatever fake issue they're making up. Like, and this is a similar thing. Like, people who are close to them are not going to call them out. Like Humanist Report and Dave Dole, they've been, like, essentially being soft on her. But then there are other people like Lance of the Serfs and this newcomer to the indie media, like, lefty sphere, Olayemi Alurin, who's just been relentlessly going after Anna. Basically, like, at one point, she even says something that's like, yes, I 100% agree with her on this thing. I saw this clip was trending on Twitter at one point where it's like, she basically said like, look guys, this is essentially just coddling the white woman hour. And it's like, yes, this is literally what is going on. Like, I'm okay with not doing kid gloves and calling Anna Kasparian a TERF, because that's literally what she's doing right now. In fact, Anna Kasparian is probably the realest TERF out there because she actually is a feminist. Like, in this controversy, almost came and went and nobody seemed to mind that much, but then it came back like 5 days ago when Alaya posted something, and then Anna Kasparian called her out because she again called out the obvious fact of like coddling the white woman hour, to which Alaya was like, yeah, I stand by my statement. What are you talking about? Rightfully so, because she's in the right and Anna's in the wrong. And then Anna Kasparian tried to get her by saying like, lol, the meltdowns over not wanting to be referred to as a birthing person is wild. I'll never apologize for that. Where Alaya basically won the whole argument by doing the biggest bombshell.
It's bad faith. They know. They know there's a difference between gender and sex. They know that it is very possible for someone to be born a biological male or biological female, but in terms of gender, identify differently as a male or non-binary, but they still have the biological capacity, the physical capacity to get pregnant. So that's why the language, the rhetoric, is inclusive to include those people. It is not a big deal, but they make it a big deal. They manufacture it into a big deal because that's all Republicans are. That's all they have. This is all they do. Endless bad faith arguments meant to fearmonger and direct hatred and fear toward other Americans, typically powerless Americans.
If you don't understand what that video was, it is Anna Kasparian literally defending using terms like birthing people and people with uterus because it is inclusive to people who do not identify as women who still have the capacity to get pregnant, and that it's a manufactured argument that conservatives and TERFs use. I'll be 100% real. The second that video was released, the controversy literally should have been over. And again, literally explains and points to my terminology of the term liberal. 10 paces to the left when on a good day, 10 paces right when it affects them personally. When Anna Kasparian saw herself getting affected, quote unquote, by this, really not being affected at all, as she's shown many, many times, unintentionally. But since she, as a second wave TERF, can't see anything beyond her own liberal sensibilities, now she is against it. But when it didn't affect her, like, it always hasn't affected her, like, when it was back before it was even brought up in any way to refer to her, she was all on board. But now that she puts herself in the perpetual victim of the second wave feminist, like, this literally just makes so much sense. Because I'm doing another video that won't be released for a while where I had to research Gamergate and I had to figure out like why all these like young men were like really, really quick to jump on like this huge anti-woman, anti-LGBTQ campaign. And it's like these men, these young men in particular, they saw themselves as the bottom of the totem pole. So when they see that anybody else is on the bottom of the totem pole, now all of a sudden they can't accept that. They're like, no, we are the bottom of the totem pole. So they're going to try and defend their position at the bottom of the totem pole. Anna sees herself at the bottom of the totem pole. The rich white liberal woman sees herself at the bottom of the totem pole right now. As such, everything revolves around her sensibilities. So now she's just going to attack like people who are trying to take her position on the bottom of the totem pole. And one weird thing that kind of came from this was like Cenk randomly, like, when he would try to defend Anna, would try to bring up like, oh, polling, like if you do polling, you understand that this is actually not popular. But it's like, what? Like, what does that have to do with anything? Like, who cares? Literally, who cares if this issue polls good or not? That was literally never an issue, never was, like, this is a non sequitur. You just literally just bring this up just so you can try and get like a victory for some reason. I only bring this up because Cenk is going to mention it in a clip that I'm going to play in a bit. And the people try to get them, people try to get into the, get the young stars, like, you advocate for issues that are not popular before, but now they're popular. it's like weird. I don't even understand. Like I guess technically an issue that they are going to bring up is kind of right, but also not, because this is a position that I've basically already came to like years ago. What many people got somewhat worried about was how this apparently, I guess technically, just ended TYT's relationship with leftists.
So I'll just say this. Okay, I love you, and it's okay, and if you disagree, it's okay. If you want to leave, that's okay, okay? Thank you for being a member all this time. I appreciate it. But what you're, in my opinion, what your misunderstanding is, and what you have maybe you didn't see is, so all this kerfuffle starts with a simple tweet, and then at least half a dozen videos from other progressives or leftists online, all attacking us and calling us all sorts of names. So maybe you don't see that, so you think, like, well, what is Cenk so upset about, right? So they call us all these names, and they feel super proud about it, like, we are more pure. So then I fight back on Twitter, and then all of a sudden they're like, how could you insult us? All we were doing was punching you in the face. No, that's a right-wing position. You punch, then you got to expect that I'm going to counter, right? I don't mean you kid tested. I mean, for folks who are out there, here, I'll name the name, Lance from the Serps. He's on here all the time on the power panel, right? And he comes out and does this video about how he's so correct and, oh yeah, the Young Turks, correct? No, Lance, you're not goddamn correct. Nobody elected you. The polling shows no one agrees with you. Your 12 buddies online, I don't care, okay? And say, oh yeah, I'm 100%, he's 99.95% correct. Oh, I'm gonna correct him. No. So look, you wanna say, hey, I don't agree with you? God bless. You wanna say, Cenk, you shouldn't say anything back because you're being rude? Come on, brother or sister. I don't know what your
I just gotta be honest. I just don't really care to like collaborate with any other leftist ever again at this point.
Yeah,
that's where I'm at, because they come on the show, they build a name for themselves, and then they build a bigger name for themselves, trashing us as if they don't know who we are, as if they haven't worked with us, they don't know what our actual political values are. So I don't, Jake, I never want to talk about them again. I never want to address them again. It's a waste of time. There's important stuff going on in the country. Our personal drama with a bunch of leftists on Twitter doesn't matter.
Many people are trying to say, like, this is TYT trying to pivot to the center or, like, pivot to the right wing. But I brought up many times before, this is not the first time, and this is not going to be the only time. They are liberals. Like, we need to stop pretending TYT is progressives. TYT are liberals. They're not leftists. They're not progressives. They are liberals. I'll say it before and I'll say it again. 10 paces left on a good day, 10 paces right when it affects them personally. Anna, those are your values. That is your political values. You say, like, oh, they don't understand our real political values. No, that is what your political values are. You've shown this repeatedly, time and time again. I don't, like, literally this whole controversy made me really realize, like, wait, you all still watch the Young Turks? I thought we all literally grew up and moved past them. Literally, if you're a member of my audience and you have a TYT membership, cancel it now. I literally am advocating for you. Cancel your TYT membership. They are not of your values, and if they are of your values, then I'm probably not of your values. And if it's any consolation, Cenk Uygur has actually praised that. He stated many times that he wants to be the future moderate. He wants his positions to be what moderate is. The problem is he greatly misunderstands what the term moderate means. Like during that whole like polling thing, he's trying to bring up like a Medicare for all is actually a moderate issue because a majority of Americans are in favor of it. It's like that's not what moderate means, you fucking idiot. Why are these big name pundits the ones who just do not understand what political terms mean? Like they said, people need to understand our values, and I understand their values perfectly. Their values are inevitably liberalism, not progressivism, not leftism, liberalism. And to close this out, I'm just going to play a funny video of Anna Kasparian saying a very interesting term.
Words to hear, but words like nigger and fag. Nigger. You niggers are why I lost my job. He only shot a nigger. Run, nigger, run. Whatever, niggerhead.
But birthing person, too off limits. And that's where I'm going to end it. So, thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And click the bell to be notified when the future video mine comes out. And if you need more content from me, you can go to my website, follow me on Twitter, join my Discord, or consider supporting me on Patreon.